revenues immediately dropped by an average of 57%. In 5 years, the spending per capita on K-12 students went from third best in the nation to third worst. In 1978, the state had a surplus of $5 billion. The backers of Prop 13 said, we'll never spend that down. It was gone in 2 years. And it's been a boom or bust economy ever since. Meanwhile, real estate prices continued to climb, in part because taxes were lower and people could convince they would buy more house. So this is why I say that the citizens of California sold their kids down the river for real estate. If you think that's silly, look at your home insurance policy sometime. Look at the cost to replace the home versus what the house is assessed at for its market value. It usually is that the first is about half to a third of the second. And that's what we call overvalued. Now, as you've noticed, the two-thirds majority rule also means that the minority in the legislature is twice as powerful as the majority, because its interests outweigh two of its opponents. Now, how's that working out? Well, lawmakers who were philosophically committed never to raise taxes currently control the state's economy as a result. A proposition is being introduced to the next ballot that does away with the two-thirds majority requirement for the budget and taxes, and says just a simple majority should be required. That would make everyone's vote equal. But meanwhile, economic crisis and everyone's in a fix. So what are the leaders of the University of California doing about it? They're raising student fees, which we might as well call tuition because it's beginning to replace the state's contribution to teaching. And they're temporarily cutting the salaries, laying off a lot of people at UC, which is happening in virtually all state agencies. There may be no way around this, but how do we know? This is why the actions of this week are taking place. Tomorrow, professors throughout the UC system are going to hold a series of actions that coincides with the opening of the fall quarter on all campuses except Berkeley. Here are some things to know about it. First of all, it's not a walkout in the traditional sense. Professors are not abandoning their jobs. It's a teach-in, as you've noticed, and this is part of it. Professors all week have been teaching students about the current crisis, its history, its implications. This is a tremendous opportunity for people to inform themselves about the political structure of California's economy, including education. Don't take anyone's word for it, find out for yourself. Second, this is not about cuts to faculty and staff salaries. It's not about furloughs. It is about, first of all, the loss of instructional support, which has led to fewer classes, fewer GSIs, lecturers, and professors. This will result in a longer time to graduation and higher net costs to many students. No one likes to see their salaries cut, but there are bigger issues here. In hard times, we can all absorb some pain, but this is talking about permanent pain. This is amputation. Second problem here is the continued disinvestment of the state in UC, which Peter alluded to. And this is a very big economic engine. For every dollar the state spends on research, it gets back $3.8 in new investment and returns. The UC system is the main producer of our doctors, engineers, business people, venture capitalists, and other people who build this economy. It makes no sense to disinvest in it. The third thing this is about is the inequities of the cuts and the judgment of the UC executives in making them. Now, maybe these are the right way to do things, but no one understands how the UC president's office calculated rate hikes and salary cuts and why this had to be balanced on the backs of students, faculty, and staff as much as they are. There is simply a lack of transparency. It's difficult for these people to account for what they did. It's a very, very complex situation. Many feel that there are other places where UC could have cut its budget. For example, in the administration, especially in the office of the president. And there are billions of dollars. It's very hard to find out how the office of the president spends its money. It's got a lot of money. But how they spend it is really hard for people to figure out the way it's accounted for. Because they don't do what we do on the campuses. It's a different thing. And there are billions of dollars in supposedly restricted funds that now turn out to be not so restricted after all. Many wonder, for example, how these funds can be called restricted when just 2 weeks ago, the university loaned the state $200 million to enable construction to continue on 10 building projects on UC campuses. Now, maybe this is what they were restricted for, but we just don't know. The cuts were made swiftly without much explanation. The other thing this is about, and I think this is the most important thing in the long run, is the lack of consultation with faculty and the threat to shared governance. Now, much of this is just that events overtook things really fast. A lot of what happened with these cuts happened quickly, but it's clear that they weren't well enough planned for, however well they were planned for. There's a concept of shared governance. This is a compact that was formed by President Benjamin I. Wheeler, the guy whose this building is named for, nearly a century ago. He recognized at the time that the UC faculty really have to have control over matters of teaching and research, and that they should also advise the president and the regents on the administration of these functions. That action made this university the best university in the world today, and it is. But, you know this. But last summer, President Yudof asked the regents and got the regents to give him so-called emergency powers that would enable him to enact any cuts he wanted and to suspend any policies he wanted without consultation. Now, that may be a function of how much time, how quickly things have to happen, but because the cuts that are being made on this campus as well as throughout the system directly affect programs in teaching and research, which other people will talk about, they are under the tradition of shared governance. This is what the faculty has to decide to do. They're supposed to be approved by the faculty, and this, in the end, is the biggest threat to the UC system. So what's happening this week? Well, there's a lot of interest at work here. The faculty, staff, students, a number of unions that are involved with UC are all taking part in this action. Now, not all these groups have the same agenda. They're not all concerned with the same thing. Some unions are staging a walkout from their jobs, others are not. Many faculty will support the unions by not crossing picket lines, which means that your classes will be held elsewhere or they'll be rescheduled. Others will come on campus to hold teach-ins. There's lots of things that happen. No one wants to hurt the quality of education. No one does. There are no winners here in this. Nobody comes out looking good when these things happen. So, something that I think has to be understood is that this systematic cuts in instructional support are really weakening our curricula and our programs. These hikes in tuition and fees are going to change UC from a public to a private university. 10 years ago, the state paid 75% of the educational costs. Now it pays less than 25%. In 1990, undergraduate fees were $2,500. By 2008, 18 years later, they had doubled. Now, that's not scandalous. During the same time, the costs of food, housing, cars, parking, and energy also doubled. But the drop in state support made UC a much poorer system, and I've been watching these cuts ratchet since I came here in 1980. This is getting worse. The regents intend to enact additional fee increases of 32%, as you know, which will bring fees next year to $10,300. Now, that is a doubling in just 3 years, not 18. Now, many would argue that Berkeley is worth it, if any college is. It's the top-ranked university in the world. These fees apply to all UC campuses, let's remember. They will still be cheaper than many other state universities and most privates. But where will this slide in state support end? In 2004, the UC and CSU systems made a compact with the governor. He promised not to erode state support further, and the universities promised to seek more outside funding. But when last year's financial crisis hit, the governor walked away from the commitment. The commitment has to be restored. The investment has to be shared by everyone in the state. So the most important thing that anyone who agrees with this can do is to consider supporting this proposition to require only a simple legislative majority to enact state budgets and raise taxes or control them or lower them or whatever it takes. Now, this is not going to solve our problems, but it's going to make it hard to blame the same old people. In particular, the proposed doubling of student fees has to be resisted at all costs. This is disastrous for undergraduates, but it's even worse for graduate students. It's crazy for graduate students because they absorb so much of the teaching and training mission of the university. It doesn't cost to educate graduate students, it pays, and they are 1/3 of the people on our campus. There are other places to find these funds, and the UC leadership has to be forced to find them. We can beat this problem, but we have to work now and work together because time is short. I hope you have a meaningful, educational, and constructive day tomorrow. Thank you.